Here's a scenario. Let's just say you're in the middle of a highly intense Mario 3 speedrun. You're on world record pace and everything's looking good so far. Sure, you've had one or two slip-ups, but nothing too major. But then you make it to that one fated place and you know that the one thing that's stopping you from a potential world record is getting a full no-hand run. You make it past the first. Perfect. The second, good. But as you slightly inch towards the third, your eyes widen as you see the one dreaded hand pull you down, which could be potential time loss. Why does this happen though? Well, it's a little thing we in the industry like to call RNG. Now you may be thinking, I hate that character, he just camps me out and spams down me the whole game. But don't let poor Nintendo decisions stop you from enjoying the concept of this, because it's honestly quite one of the sickest things ever. Now, what is RNG, you may be asking? It's essentially the chance of getting one of many probabilities, kind of like a test your luck kind of thing, with the luck factor being tied to whether or not you get the actual outcome you want. Many gamblers love these three letters because it's honestly a make or break for them, but in speedrunning, it can be one of the most stressful things ever because it could be the best thing for your run or the worst. Today, I just want to go through the art of RNG and how luck can lead to either the perfect run or cause the downfall of many more. RNG, three letters that make you scared to keep your closet open at night. In video games, this is an extremely complex thing that many people might not even be aware of because in all honesty, most of the time it's not even that noticeable. The simplest way to explain it is just thinking of slot machines. If you get a perfect roll, you win. If you don't, then you just keep going for hours and hours, losing more than you potentially gain, claiming that you're not addicted and can stop anytime you want to.
Decay, how do you know so much about gambling?
I heard it from a friend. In video games though, it can be much more discreet. Think of playing an RPG. In most games, there's a set chance that you get to land a critical hit which does a shit ton more damage to your opponent, but most of the time the chances to hit them vary. They can be either high or low, so you get either Pokemon Red or Fire Emblem Fates, I don't know, pick your poison. It's not only that though, in more open worldish games, it can be used to determine what kind of loot you get from an enemy, what you find in chests, or with some games it can just depict random encounters. RNG does also play a factor in, say, boss cycles, since boss fights usually never stick to the same patterns of attacking. Now, let's get this straight. Luck and RNG are two different things. RNG is just like a constantly spinning slot machine in the aspect that it just keeps going until it stops, while luck determines whether or not you get the desired outcome you want or not. Like here in Ultimate, if you have good RNG, you'll get the chance to kill someone at like 20. But if you have bad RNG, well, just keep fishing until something works. It's a huge part in gaming, whether you know it or not. So with a brief, rough description of what RNG is, it'll be fairly easy to understand how it can be a make or break in the speedrunning scene. While not all speed games have RNG, mostly because it sucks having to restart a whole run because you just so happen to get unlucky, a good portion of games people run through do have it. There's a lot of times where you can be practicing or watching a speed run and you just experience that one thing that just feels like a twisted fate of luck. Well, it is kind of. When you're speedrunning, you're moving as fast as you possibly could, and unless you've been lemming out a certain run for months or even years, you don't really notice what could or couldn't be luck-based. Even most times when you do know, it can still be a troubling factor if your run requires that specific route that has certain random cycles. So if there's no set direction predetermined in the game, chances are the odds are always going to be stacked against you. A good example of this could be when you're running through Minecraft. I know, shocker, right? Basically, everything in Minecraft is randomized, even the starting spawn point. So, it's no shocker that every Minecraft category has the option for a random seed run. This starts off the player in a new, completely unknown world that they have to try to run through as fast as they can with as little knowledge as possible. This is a complete opposite to the set seed run where the player already knows a good portion, if not the whole world, and gives them a clear route of what to do and where to go. While there are elements of RNG, it's not as significant as random seed where the player is just left completely in the dark. Random runs allow players to think more quickly and act as they go rather than study a map of the world like their SAT prep packets. It can also make cheating attempts more noticeable. There are ways to beat the odds of RNG though. I mean, depending on how much the game you're running through has, sometimes it's not that big of an obstacle. The main way is essentially just adapting to what you have. I know this is the same point another person made on this topic, but it's essentially just true because adapting to the environment is way simpler than forcing an impossible outcome that you know is fairly impossible. Take it back to my earlier example of Super Mario Bros. 3. Handless, as I like to call it, is one of the most luck-based things ever because it's just random. The only real way to adapt in that way is just resetting the run and hoping to God you get it next time. And since the run isn't really that long, it wouldn't be the worst thing ever, but I do get it if you're on personal best or world record pace, that could be soul crushing. But with games like Battle for Bikini Bottom, adaptation can kinda just get more creative. For example, in the combat arena, players just learned to root the duplicators as best as they possibly could before they could spawn in robots, since they don't spawn in at a consistent rate. Sometimes they can't even spawn them at all. That level of adaptation is one of the best ways to combat the curse of RNG, because it not only leaves the runners to having more fun and saves a bit of time, but it also leaves them to getting more creative with how they optimize the run more. Like I said, depending on how much randomness your game of choice has can depict how you can adapt to it. However, in games where the RNG mechanic is extremely far in the run or just too overcomplicated, there are ways to overcome that obstacle as well. Now, here's another example. In Wind Waker, there's a squid hunt minigame that just basically has the player randomly guess locations of squids in a battleship type grid. Since this is randomly generated and it's legit 30 minutes into a world record pace 100% run, it's been a major reset for years, especially since a 100% run requires multiple completions of the game. In 2020 though, runners managed to craft a tool that, while not making the run easier, saved a good amount of time on that specific minigame that changed the run for years to come. Essentially, they reverse engineered the RNG system and found the mathematical function used to generate numbers has always been the same, as well as always using the same seed. The tool they created uses probability curves and run-specific timing to generate a grid that shows the likely positions of each squid, updated with each hit or miss. Do I know what any of that means? No. Does this shit sound boring as hell? Yes. But to be fair, this was peak COVID, so what else did they have to do in their free time? You can also use emulation tools like tasks to essentially manipulate the randomness to be in your favor. There are also ways like abusing save states to provide a favorable outcome, but like, come on, are you really gonna do that in a speedrun? There are many ways to manipulate RNG, but if I can be honest, where is the fun in that in any category other than speedrun? Now, I'm not gonna sit here and state that all aspects of RNG are bad, because in all honesty, it could be pretty cool. Like, just the feature of having a good portion of things you do, or how you play the game be dictated by being randomly generated, can be one of the most amazing things ever. Most RPG games, Souls games, Zelda games, and even more have RNG, and I personally think that gaming wouldn't be the same without it. While, yeah, some people could have stronger opinions on the topic than others, you can't say that you don't feel a sense of release whenever you land a game-ending crate or get one of the best weapons of your favorite game thanks to a randomized box. Hell, people even like the challenge that randomness brings so much that they even make randomizer mods for tons of different games like Mario 64, Wind Waker, Pokemon, and so much more. And with hundreds of thousands, even millions of people playing these mods every day. But I do get not wanting to have your opponent spamming one option the whole game because it could possibly give them a stat buff. All in all, I would be lying if I said RNG was the perfect mechanic, because it isn't. But it is one of the most cool things ever, because you're always running the risk of possibilities rather than what you actually know. I get it could be bad in some aspects like speedrunning, where it could literally be the biggest time loss and reset, but in a casual sense, it's what adds the extra bit of flavor to the gaming experience. Oh, and gambling is back.